Good afternoon. I'll call this General Services Public Works Committee meeting to order. Today is June 7th, 2021 at noon, and we are in the library community room. Today we have 6 items on the agenda, including a presentation from our Human Resources Director, Melissa Tosi. And to start us off, we have a Police Chief Lee White with us today. And the first item is to approve an agreement with Longwell Trapp Architects for preparation of the Police Department Facility Master Plan utilizing impact fees.
Well, good afternoon. As you may be aware, we are basically out of space at our current headquarters building, and there's very little room in that current facility space for expansion. However, there is some. For instance, I have 2 squads of officers that don't have a home right now. I have 8 sergeants who are crammed into a space that's only designed for 4. We have been out of lockers now for over a year for the storage of weapons and equipment when officers are off shift and just things of that general nature. Longwell Trapp and Associates has some ideas on possible expansion, and so what we're requesting is to enter into an agreement with them for them to take a harder look at our facility to see what expansion might be possible in that location.
Great. Any questions?
Yeah, thank you. Chief, well, you and I have had a few discussions about this because I've visited that area many times. When you say expansion, are you looking about going back toward the parking lot, or?
That would be a piece of it. There's really only 4 areas that would allow for expansion. One is kind of off of the northwest, so that training room area could at some point be expanded. The detective area, which is currently off on the northeast, that area will need to be expanded at some point for additional detectives. But our most current needs are really off to the, well, I guess actually southwest and southeast portions of the station. The southeast would be where all of our lockers are currently. That locker room is beyond capacity. So that's a huge need. And then additional offices could be expanded off to the southwest side of that building, down towards the current parking lot that you talked about.
So what are officers doing right now? They don't have a locker to change or to store their equipment. What are they doing?
Well, some of them are bringing their equipment home. Some of them are doubling up. Anybody who doesn't have, so those of us with offices, we gave up our lockers years ago. So we don't, I just store my weapon in other places type of thing. But like the investigation sergeants who share an office, it's a little problematic for them. So we got some little teeny lockers that they can stick in their office that are lockable, that they can put weapons and equipment in. So it's just basically Band-Aids. We've been putting Band-Aids on this for years.
Yeah. Yeah. What's the time frame on how soon could they have this feasibility study done?
I don't know. We really didn't go into that much detail with them. Mostly we're kind of at his whim, and then even after that, it would be up to the construction timelines as to what we might be able to get something built in. That would be a whole second thing we would bring to you. But he really didn't give. I don't know if it's in the proposal or not. But I don't remember a hard timeline on when we might get this information back.
Okay.
I get that information to you though and send it to you later.
Whenever's fine. And then this is totally separate from any discussions we've had about having a facility in the downtown area.
Yes.
For quick response.
Yes.
This is just dealing with the immediate need at your home office.
Having a second station downtown would give us a little bit of ability to spread our wings a little bit. So for instance, the community action team doesn't have a home currently at all because we got rid of Station 2, and so they don't have office space anywhere. When we had another place downtown, that alleviated some of the pressure, but since we haven't had one now in well over a year, they're basically without a home. So, and that group gets a lot of our intelligence regarding drug houses and some of the more violent offenders that are in our area that they look after and put in jail and things of that nature. There's really no good space for them to keep those intelligence-based documents. They're just working out of the patrol riding room right now.
Is there any discussion, I won't keep him much longer, but is there any discussion between you and Troy about a short-term rental for the downtown area?
We really have not had those discussions, no ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Well, just my point was to follow up on that too. When I saw the agenda item and the, talking about the police department, facility master plan, I was thinking that maybe it was more broad, but now I understand, it's specific for the main station now, and that's certainly needed. But also, I would also like to, just keep that on the drawing board and keep beating the drum that we need to look at the bigger picture. And I'm aware that there's, discussions about, maybe a very small area in the parking garage a few blocks up that might, maybe that'll do something very temporary, but at least I want to be on record. That's certainly not my idea of what we need for long-term or for the second facility. So we need to really keep that on the drawing board as well. But I certainly, this is necessary in the here and now, and I certainly support that, and I'll be ready for the motion.
All right.
Okay, make a motion to recommend that council approve an agreement with Longwell and Trapp Architects for preparation of the police department facility master plan utilizing impact fees in the amount of $6,500 plus reimbursables.
Second?
And I just want to I have one point of clarification that this is for 6,500 plus reimbursables.
Yes, ma'am. And this would all
And-
come out of the impact fees.
Okay, yep, and the balance of impact fees is over 400,000.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. All those
Looks
in,
like we're good. Okay.
good, yeah. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Our second item on the agenda today is to declare used police vehicles as surplus and authorize the sale at auction. And once again, we have Police Chief Lee White with us.
Well, thanks to council's great work, we've added a couple vehicles to our fleet over the past year, and these marked vehicles are replacing some of our aging fleet vehicles that we have out there. I have a 2004 Impala. It really only has, well, both these don't have incredibly high miles. This one has 124,000 miles on it, but it needs a brand-new transmission in addition to some other things, and frankly, it's just not worth putting the money into the vehicle that is really kind of a rattle trap. I'm not sure if it's going to last too much longer, even put a transmission in it. And the second one's in the same boat. It's actually newer with fewer miles, but along with the failing transmission, it also has exhaust problems and electrical issues that we can't seem to chase down, and so we're recommending surplusing both of those vehicles and selling them at auction.
Any questions? Pretty straightforward.
I'll make a motion. I make a motion to recommend that council declare used police vehicles as surplus and authorize the sale at auction.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
And our third item on the agenda is to approve an agreement with the Idaho Transportation Department for Local Highway Safety Improvement Program grant to make pedestrian safety improvements in Coeur d'Alene and authorize partial payment for matching funds in the amount of $2,000. And welcome Chris Bosley, our city engineer.
Thank you. So today I have a pedestrian safety grant before you. This came to you a while back and was approved for the grant application. So I'm just going to kind of go through the presentation I had at the grant application time just to refresh everyone's memory about what this is about. So the Local Highway Safety Improvement Program, they award based on a benefit cost ratio, and what they're looking for is crashes that involve, in this case, pedestrians or bicyclists that are either serious or fatalities. And then there's a 7.34% match on those grants, so that makes it a really good deal for us, I guess, because we're only paying a portion of the fees on that. And so with rectangular rapid flashing beacons, the benefit cost ratio is pretty high. So what we did was we looked at maps of the city and all these crashes, and on the left is the pedestrian and bicycle crashes that we're specifically looking for. And then we weed those out to look at the type A, which are serious debilitating crashes, and the fatalities. And you can see that on the right where we had a few of those where this grant would be eligible. And then here is a rectangular rapid flashing beacon that's on on Harrison by Bryan Elementary, just to show you what it is that we're looking to fund with this project. And so the places that we picked out and were approved with that grant application were here at Hanley and Madeline Drive. We've gotten a few calls over the years to put something in there to help kids cross when they're heading to school. At one time, we had flags hanging there that they could grab and walk across Hanley, but those flags tend to walk off on their own. We've restocked them before, but they disappear again. So, and then here at Bosanko and Howard, this is, if you go in the back way behind Fred Meyer, when you get to the top of the hill, Fred Meyer would be off to your left in this picture. There's a crosswalk there that is in desperate need of getting people's attention that somebody might be crossing there. Then we had 3 in Riverstone where the trails cross Riverstone Drive. One at BB Boulevard, one near Bardnay with that center median in it, and then the Centennial Trail crossing itself. And then lastly, on Best Avenue, around the area of 6th, we're hoping that maybe it can be slid down a little bit more, but we need to work through that during the design. But this is a case, this is worth pointing out here. There are no sidewalks off to the right on this picture here. That is part of the grant also, and that's what makes the grant cost a lot more. You know, it's a $605,000 grant, and we're only paying about $44,000 of that. At this time, I'm only asking for approval for the $2,000 to get the design started, but we will have to purchase a little bit of right-of-way and do some design work and get sidewalks installed in these areas. So this will be a great opportunity for safer school crossings as well. Oh, and I'm sorry, there's actually one more. So this is one that we've been working with Lake City High School on quite a bit. You can see in this Google Street View image, kids are crossing the street to their parents who are parked over at the Maverick station. The school has tried to discourage kids from crossing there and parents from picking up there, but it's really difficult to control that. This seems like a great opportunity to put in a flashing crosswalk beacon there as well. And then this is just a recap of those 5 locations. There's actually 3 at Riverstone. So, and then with that, I would ask that you approve the state-local agreement for this and begin payment with the $2,000.
Well, just, yeah, and I can picture each one of these. Some of them I go by different times. I'm glad to see that one on Hanley, I think, especially, you know, with the high school kid traffic, you get to see a lot of that. And then down right by the Maverick, where earlier in the year, because we had that was one of the places we had an issue with cars parking there, so we've done away with that, so they can't, you know, be waiting there, or maybe some of them do. But so that's a good place. And I appreciate the 3 in Riverstone. Are there any that were close and didn't make the cut? Like I'm thinking on Ironwood, I know we have the one right by the hospital over to the Heart Center, but a little further down, I mean, there are some other crosswalks, and one like where the fitness center, and then there's stuff on the other side, and I've noticed people kind of playing dodgeball. Did any of those come up for?
I don't think that those ones qualified. We were
maybe
trying to
didn't
grab
have the
anything we
accident.
could that qualified because of the benefit-cost ratio and what type of injury or crash occurred there, but yeah.
Okay. And I will say, for getting that, for something that's going to end up that big, to get it started for $2,000 sounds like a great deal. So,
Okay. Thank you. Chris, 2-part question.
Yes.
One is, when do you expect these to be completed? And then, didn't you at the last council meeting talk about a slight delay with the BB crossing because of La Crosse?
Yeah, well, so this BB crossing, well, I'll start with your second question, I guess. This BB crossing that's in this grant is not the same one this is the one that's at BB Boulevard but crossing Riverstone Drive.
Oh, gotcha.
We are working with the developer on getting one at BB Boulevard down by Bella Reeve,
Okay.
where the Centennial Trail crosses.
Great.
And then the design would start in fiscal year 21, or 21, 22. So that would be in like October is when they would release those funds. And then it would be like a year later that, that construction could begin, fiscal year 22, 23.
So we're a little ways out.
A little ways, yes. Unfortunately, I mean, some of these, you know, I had to let the school know that they really want that one there at, by Lake City High School, but with this grant, you know, it takes time, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Well, I'll just add that this is a great opportunity. And Chris, I know you're aware, and we've talked about it many times, of the crossing at Third and Foster, right by Station 1 there. There's a lot of concern from citizens in that area. My guess is that that crossing didn't qualify?
Correct.
Okay.
But we are working on a plan there. We would like to install at some point an emergency signal for the fire department. But there's also a possibility of one on Ramsey at that fire station as well. So we'll get to them as we can. But when we do put in an emergency signal there to let the fire department out, we can put in a pedestrian signal to go along with that.
Oh, great.
So,
Okay, so more to come.
yes.
Great.
Well, and what is the cost, I mean, providing it doesn't take anything out of the ordinary, but approximately for one of those installs?
Oh, they are about $15,000 for one of them. And this one, we're getting several of them for 3 times that amount with our match, but we're also getting sidewalk and right-of-way purchases in there too. So it is
Right.
a pretty good
Which
deal
I
for
appreciate,
us.
that rounds it
Yeah.
up, but I just, with some of these that maybe they don't make the grade for the most
Right.
dangerous, I guess I would hope we would look, and maybe as we're getting into, you know, almost budget time for next year, that if we have some other pockets of funds that some of these that we've identified that don't make that criteria, but we still see as safety issues, and maybe we can pull it out of our own pocket some other place.
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion to recommend that council approve an agreement with the Idaho Transportation Department for the Local Highway Safety Improvement Program grant to make pedestrian safety improvements in Coeur d'Alene and authorize partial payment for matching funds in the amount of $2,000.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thanks, Chris. Our fourth item on the agenda is to approve the purchase of a utility terrain vehicle, UTV, for emergency backcountry rescue responses in the amount of approximately $21,000. And we have Lucas Pichette here from Deputy Chief with our fire department. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Council. How are you?
Good. It's good to see you.
Good to see you all. Today, like you said, we are looking to get a UTV to complete part of a backcountry response package. And that, coupled with a tech rescue grant that we have for $14,000, kind of puts all of that together and allows us to get into these backcountry areas that we have not only in our area but also in the county that we respond to, you know, per mutual aid agreements. Currently, we're making do, but we're forced to walk in or rely on whatever transportation is there to get to some of these really kind of sketchy areas in the backcountry to try and grab patients and rescue them and bring them out. This would allow us to put tracks on the UTV with that tech rescue grant. The UTV itself will allow us to get there. So, and it also allows us to haul 3 people and the tools and equipment to do everything safe.
Great. Any questions?
Yes,
Christie?
thank you, Madam Chair. Lucas, so does this grant come with training for the drivers?
So the grant, the UTV would be purchased out of our budget, but the grant itself, we already have the training per se for backcountry and you know, for low angle rope rescue, high angle rope rescue, we already have all of that training. It's just really the ability to get all of our personnel and equipment to the location is pretty much the key problem.
Yeah.
So that's what would be solved here.
Well, certainly necessary.
Yeah.
Well, then, just with a caveat that sometime I'm sure you'd like to give a demo rides to council members, but
For sure.
I would be happy to make a motion to recommend that council approve the purchase of utility terrain vehicle for emergency backcountry rescue responses in the amount of approximately $21,000.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you.
Passes.
Have a great day.
Yeah, thank you. Item number 5, approve the purchase of a new 2021 305ET2 CR cat excavator, very specific, from Western States Equipment in the amount of $74,962.69. And Kyle Marine's with us, Assistant Director for our Water Department.
Good
Welcome.
afternoon, Council. Thank you for having me. I'm here today to bring the 305E2 cat excavator for approval for purchase.
It rolls
So-
off your tongue so smoothly.
Sorry, utilize the equipment fairly often, so that's just what we call it when we're out in the field, and it just comes natural. In past years, we have repeatedly replaced yardly services, and I know you're well aware of the yardly services and the failures we've had. With the areas we're starting to move into, most of the utilities are buried in the same trench. So what they did in the 80s or the late 70s and early 80s is they started utilizing a one trench concept with power, telephone, water, everything but sewer, because that's got to be a certain distance apart. So for several years, they kept all that equipment or all those utilities in one trench. So we utilize a vac truck for most of our excavations for our yardly service replacement. But at times in different areas, we can't get the truck in the certain area, or we need additional equipment there. Our backhoes aren't versatile enough to get up in the yards and dig between some of these equipment, so we have to move it often. It takes a long period of time. So what we've been doing is we've been renting one of the excavators that is mentioned in here. That size, sometimes larger, sometimes smaller, depends on what's available. Each year, the cost of that rental has gone up. So we budget about $80,000 in our budgeting line item for rental equipment. $25,000 is set aside to rent that specific piece of equipment for several months in the summertime to replace mainly yardly services. While we have that equipment, we also utilize it to work around our well houses, some other areas that's a little bit tighter to work with a backhoe on our current equipment that we own. So we got looking at the new source well, which is a state purchasing program, options, lease to own options, lease options like we do with our front end loaders, and also purchasing. So after discussing it with management and staff, one thing that was brought up to utilize funds and savings is to take that $25,000 that we have set aside for that equipment, and then the additional funds from our cash balance to purchase the equipment outright. So by doing so, we can save considerable funds in the next 5 years and even more considerable funds in the next 10 years and into the future. So what we're looking at doing is purchasing the equipment instead of renting it each year or even leasing it to save the city money in the long run. This should easily pay us back in less than 5 years. It just depends on the time frame that you utilize the equipment, depends on the rental savings. But we usually utilize equipment for 3 to 4 months throughout the summertime. So that's why I'm bringing this forward to you today, to move forward with the purchase of the 305E2 cat excavator for $74,962.69 through the Sourcewell program, which is an approved process to purchase through government that already does the 3-bid process and make sure it's a comparable cost savings for the city. And with that, I'll stand for any questions.
Christie?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, 2 questions.
You betcha.
For number 1, what would be the lifespan of the equipment? And then on number 2, maybe you could talk about how our departments do share some things. We do share resources. We're not all just out buying new equipment.
Correct.
So maybe if you could just, those 2 items.
You betcha. Your first question on life expectancy. So most equipment, we try to do a time span of 10 years and then under 6,000 hours. So when you reach that 6,000 hours, that's getting towards where you're doing more maintenance on the machine than it's worth. And it really depends on how many hours you put on the machine. With this machine, we should be able to do the 6,000 hours in 10 years. We might be able to stretch it a little longer. It just depends on how often it's used. And each year we try to include a little bit more yardly services. And as more utilities come in the ground, it makes it a little bit more difficult for our larger equipment to get in there. So we'll be utilizing this more often. Also, as the city grows, we do more and more work each year to try to keep up with the replacement program within the city. It will be utilizing this as well. On average, we're using about 400 hours on a machine such as this a year. So the lifespan will most likely be more than 10 years at this point, but 5 years in the future as the city expands and projects increase. I know it'll last 10 years for sure. Beyond that, it's hard to speculate at this time. On your second question for sharing equipment, yes, we absolutely do share equipment. The problem with the city is all our construction projects are in a certain time frame in the summertime. So we do share equipment as much as possible. The hard part is most of the time everything's tied up during the construction season for all departments. But we absolutely do share. If we can, I'm in communication with the streets department for their sweepers. They're in communication with us that they can utilize the extra loader or a dump truck. And this equipment would also be utilized with them if it's available. But we do work with them very closely.
Excellent, thank you.
Well, I think this makes a lot of sense. There's, when you evaluate from the economic point of view, there are some things that it definitely makes sense to rent because you don't have to use them very often. But if there comes like this, it looks like you've studied, there's a tipping point where if you're going to pay more for cost of rental over a period of X amount of years, then it definitely makes sense to have our own. Then we control it, we maintain it, and there might be opportunities for sharing at different times. So anyway, I think this, it's good. And
Absolutely. On a further note, we do track all our rental equipment each year, and I have those cataloged, and we look at that very closely each year to see if it's worthwhile to purchase or not. It hasn't really been worthwhile to purchase except for these last 2 years as we expand our Yardley replacement and as our utilities move in the area. We're renting it more and more often because we just can't get in there and do the work. So if we don't have the equipment, it's a handhole and it just takes several days to complete. With the equipment, we can complete it in a couple hours. So we do monitor that and track all that equipment. From large equipment that we rent for big projects, it's not economical to use. For smaller equipment, sometimes it's not either. But with the Solar Swell program, it breaks everything down. It makes it very user-friendly. So as we keep track of those costs throughout the year and several years in the past, we can definitely utilize something such as that and say that, yes, this will save the city money in the long run in a certain amount of time.
And not to go too far in the weeds, but when you track those savings or even cost, you're tracking the cost of the rental as well as the labor cost if you did not rent it. Because you said you cut hours on the project by renting this machine.
Yes,
So you're reducing your labor needed for that project. So
Correct.
is that calculated in?
that is not calculated in this cost.
So that's an additional savings?
That's an
then?
additional savings,
Great,
yes.
great.
well, then.
Looking for a motion?
Sure, I'd be happy to recommend that council approve the purchase of a new 2021 305 E2 ZR Cat excavator from Western States Equipment in the amount of $74,962.69.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
And our last item for the day is a presentation from Director Melissa Tosi, our Human Resources Director, excuse me. Welcome, Melissa.
Thank you for having me. Good afternoon. So I just want to go over a quick overview of our HR department and some of the things that are currently keeping us busy. That's not the right one. Let's use this. So our mission statement in HR, the important part about our mission statement is that we are giving compliant information, consistent information to our employees and citizens and providing excellent customer service. The compliance piece, we depend and rely a lot on our legal department, so they help us stay compliant and are very supportive in that area. And then obviously HR is known for our recruiting. We hire our employees along with the help of all of our department managers. But besides just the hiring process, we're really part of our employees' decisions and help throughout their entire career. So that's kind of the fun part about being in HR. So this is your HR team. There is now 3 of us. In 2019, council approved an additional FTE in our department. So myself, Melissa Tosi, Darcy Todd, and Ann Boisvert are the 2 HR specialists. The industry standard is generally 1 HR professional for every 100 employees. So I think we're sitting in a really good place. That extra position was really a game changer for our services. And Ann has been an exceptional addition to our team. We have 353 benefited positions right now, and with seasonals and temporary, we run just over 400 employees. So we're a little under the industry average, but we're efficient and we're doing great. So we appreciate that extra position. So this is all the staff that we support, our different departments, and then also the seasonal positions actually take quite a bit of time getting those on board as well. So we're a department of 3, but we look at having many more employees than that with all of our support we give. So this is kind of the HR main overview, the main elements that we do every day. And then always at the end is the day-to-day surprises that may kind of change our focus, and we don't feel like we get anything done. But the HR duties that are not in our job description, I feel like this is very fitting. The unofficial lawyer, psychologist, event planner, teacher, peacemaker, career planner, and detective. I feel like I could add a few more, but these are the day-to-day surprises that always keep things interesting. So as far as recruitment goes, our main goal is always to hire the best people we can for our city. The process is quite intensive. There's a lot of things that go into getting the right people here and keeping them here. This is kind of just a snapshot of the last 5 years, our recruitment tracking software. The number right above the year represents the positions that we filled, and then the number above that are how many applications we reviewed to get there. So our average years of service is sitting about 10 years, which is pretty high. And our turnover rate, I averaged that over the last decade, it's just under 4%. And if you look at the Department of Labor average for government, state and local government, it's usually around 19%. So we're doing quite well. And this is just kind of a breakdown of our departments and how many positions in these departments we hired that are vacancies for benefited positions in the green, the non-benefited temporary seasonal in the gray, and then our internal promotions in the teal. So that's kind of the numbers behind the positions, and these are the excellent faces with the benefited positions that we've hired in the last year and a half.
So you mentioned some of the industry averages, but I'm always happy to see the internal promotions. Are we about on average any better? Do you have a sense of, what our proportion of internal promotions are versus other?
That's a great question. I'm not sure I know the answer to it, but I will guess by saying that we have lots of departments that really, really work hard at trying to internally promote if the justification is there. I mean, we need people that are qualified and that can do the job well. And that part of that is the department preparing those people for those roles. So
I think that's a good default to try to grow our own. Sometimes circumstances might be that you've got to do something different, but if you can grow your own, that's good, and it also gives people, something to look forward to, that, there's always another, something I can aspire to. So I think it works best for employees and the organization when possible.
Right. And we do typically, over a certain pay grade, we do externally recruit for almost all of those positions, even if we have an internal applicant that we feel is a good fit. And we just feel like that helps validate the selection for the department. And our internals generally are going to have an advantage. They've done the work or been part of the work or have been here with the city. But it really does help validate the selection at that point. And they generally do stand out. So our classification and compensation plan is an important element in HR to make sure that we're maintaining our internal and external equity. So I just wanted to bring this up because we get lots and lots of questions on job descriptions and pay and things like that. If you go to the city's website and go under our department, HR, we have all of our pay structures listed there, and then we have a breakdown of every department, all the positions, what their pay grades are, and how much they make. So that's all very open to anybody that's interested in that information. And then when you go under job opportunities, you'll see all of our internal positions that we're recruiting for, and you can pull up any job description. So all of that information is public. And so you see all the pay changes because I come to council for approval on that. But it's important to, that kinds and levels chart is a list of all of our positions and pay grades. It's important to keep a good equity on all of those. So that's an important piece of what we do. And then our employee benefits, there's a lot to list. These are just kind of the main ones that stand out. This is going to relate back to our turnover rate being so low. Council has approved many really amazing benefits here at the city. And then with our 3 different collective bargaining groups, there are different benefits within those groups that are important and help draw people here and really help us with our recruiting process as well. So benefits are excellent. And then of course we are known to have some rules. We actually have a lot of rules. Our personnel rules, which again, I come to council for amendments and changes on those, apply to all of our employees. We do still have a set of civil service rules that is specific to our fire union that goes over the way we recruit and hire for the fire union. We do have 3 separate collective bargaining agreements that have specific language for those groups in there. So depending on who the employee is, we go to all these pieces to look at policy. And then our drug testing, we do all the CDL and safety sensitive drug testing for new employees and randoms. And that's just a small list of lots of federal laws that we have to stay compliant under and that come up all the time. So training and development is an important piece that we try to help all of our departments out, as well as sending information out to employees. We have developed a new onboarding program that I'll talk a little bit about in a minute. We do all the ICRIMP required training that helps our savings on the premium there. And we try to send out compliance topics to make sure our supervisors are following all of those federal laws as well internally. And lots of discussion with departments on evaluations and wording and sitting down with those employees and making sure that process is beneficial on both ends. And then the last 2 pieces on there, the Employee Assistance Program and ThinkZoom, which is our e-learning. The ThinkZoom training I'll go into. The ThinkZoom Council approved a couple years ago, and that's an e-learning based training that we've been sending out to employees that has really been helpful. We've been able to, any of our amendments through the personnel rules or different policies. Last year we had a lot of policies with COVID-19. We were able to funnel that out to employees right through that platform, and then we know that they receive it because there's an acknowledgement on their end. Lots of professional development. We have employees that just go in there and look for topics and are able to watch different videos, so that's been super helpful. Our health and wellness piece of that has been very popular. And then we made sure that we have a quarterly featured training topic every quarter that employees know that they can go in and there's something important that we've put in there for them to watch. So this is just kind of a statistic on, it's hard to see the health and wellness piece, but the mandatory piece is in red, and so our employees have been great about watching the things that we say that are required. And then these are just all different topics that employees are going in and watching videos on, or we've put as a feature training that they're reviewing and going through and watching different learning opportunities. And that's from last year through current. And then I wanted to touch on the EAP program because I think it's really important. We have been really making sure our employees are aware of our EAP program. These are statistics just from last year. So 58 total services. You can see that there's employees, spouse, and children accessing the program. Those were the general issues just from last year. And we recognize that there is a mental health piece, especially with our public service employees, that we want to make sure that EAP is there for them, and knowing that maybe there needs to be one step more for public safety especially, but this is a good start. So workers' compensation, Darcy does all the workers' comp in our department. We have always had a good number of claims. So when you look at the bottom number of the year, the green number above it is how many claims we have per year on work-related injuries. And then the dollar amount above that represents what that year is. So we have two types of claims: a medical only, so an employee goes in, gets hurt, and gets released, comes back to work. Those generally aren't too expensive. And then you have the medical plus the time loss claim, that when you see those two big spikes in years, those are going to be time loss claims. So we work really hard, as so do the departments, on getting employees back, even if it's a light duty capacity, to keep them engaged and get them back to work. But Darcy does a great job of working with State Insurance Fund, working with the employee and the hospital or urgent care, so it takes quite a bit of time. And then HR is known for just a lot of public miscellaneous information and tracking. We can always tell when employees are refinancing because we have lots and lots of bank calls. That has been the case over the last 6 months. We are the record keeper of all of our personnel files for employees. We do lots and lots of benefit and wage surveys because I think that we're an employer that a lot of other agencies are looking at to see what we're doing and providing. So we have a lot of surveys that we do. And then when people don't know where to start, they generally start with us. So we direct a lot of those calls. So just a few recent accomplishments. I put COVID-19 at the top because it really has been an exhausting year and a half. There was so much change last year. It really took a lot of patience and flexibility. Employees had lots of concerns, leave concerns. Most people don't like change. You saw lots of policies come out that we were trying to help guide employees by providing information on. So I feel like the last month or so we've kind of gotten a little bit past it, that it's not so much of a topic as much. So I'm hoping that stays the case, but I think probably COVID-19 could be at the top of all of our departments' lists. It's been stressful for everybody, but we worked together and we managed to get through it. The quarterly focus citywide training, we feel good about what we're providing employees for options there. Last year was the first full year of our new trust for our Regents medical plan, so that was a lot of effort to get that up and running with the medical review committee as well. Lots of recruitments, and with that third position we have in HR right now, Ann does all of the initial payroll to get that ready to get to finance. She audits the time cards, and it's really been super, super helpful to have a consistent person making sure all of our employees are getting paid correctly. So that's been really great. And then risk management and our workers' comp, we do have a very effective return to work program. We actually received a small dividend back from State Insurance Fund last year. We haven't gotten one for many years, so that was really a good thing. Lots of conflict resolution. We help departments sit down with employees in an effort to move forward and get better behavior. And then HR represents all of those following committees that I feel like really brings some good to our city and also some fun. And Anne actually just put out the new walking challenge this morning for the summer. And then I mentioned the new onboarding presentation a little earlier. We actually start our first one this Friday. And the goal is really just to bring new employees in and give them a better summary of what it is to be a City of Coeur d'Alene employee. Give them a few faces up on the screen that they can recognize, and just kind of talk about our culture a little bit more. Our city administrator is going to be part of that, and just try to formulate the team from the very beginning.
Melissa, are those going to be done quarterly or monthly, or how do you envision those?
Every time.
So we'll just kind of do it as we have a good group of employees.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is just kind of an example slide of of one of the aspects of the presentation. So we will introduce mayor and council and talk a little bit about how that process works, and we'll do the same thing with our department heads as well.
Then you're gonna go through kind of one by one and who to watch out for, or
I'll let Troy do that.
Troy can give the narrative.
personality
Helpful
profiles,
tips.
okay.
But we just really want them to recognize that working for the city is more than just being in your one department. There's a lot that goes into being a team and working together and working outside the box a little bit. So that's our goal with that. And with that, I'm happy to stand for any questions.
Thanks. Just comments. First of all, excellent presentation. Love the onboarding. It's really kind of like an orientation expanded. So
Right.
that's great. You know, Melissa, I spent a lot of years as a supervisor with the city, and what I always found so effective from HR was supervisors have to do so many evaluations.
Yes.
And aside from what you've been dealing with all the time when you're dealing with different personalities with employees, supervisors deal with that all day long too, but also they have to keep people on task. But the biggest thing in a supervisor's job is, I think, risk management to the city. And especially at the police department, and because we're exposed to so many different things. So what I found really valuable from HR were when HR would come and individually meet with a group of supervisors and talk about evaluations. I personally was someone who would write a novel on an employee, but I thought it was important to validate everything and give examples. But I do have a lot of knowledge of other supervisors just because of lack of focus on that, would not do a very thorough evaluation. You'd be lucky to get a paragraph out of them. You know, it just wasn't their comfort zone. But what we're finding across the nation is those old evaluations that you signed off on as a supervisor, they're gonna show up in court possibly. So those are the kind of things that I think about throughout the day, like what are we doing in risk management to make sure our supervisors, all across the city, not just the police department,
Right.
are really focused on good evaluations that 10 years later, they can look at that and say, well, yeah, I signed off on that because it's valid, or I gave meaningful information.
Right.
A quick example, I had supervisors who would not keep track of different things I did throughout 6 or 8 months, whatever. They just didn't. That's okay. But because they hadn't kept track of anything, kept any personnel notes, I had in my evaluation that I did a really good job of shining my boots. And I'm telling you, I didn't shine my boots but maybe once a month. It just was not a priority. I kept them presentable and that's it. So that was just completely made up, so there was something to put in the evaluation.
Yeah.
So we know how important these evaluations are down the road. So I just want to tell you, I really like it when your department goes out and helps supervisors know what's appropriate, not just what's appropriate, but actually put more than a paragraph
Sure.
in there.
Yeah.
So I've always appreciated that about HR.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And the evaluations are very important, and they are a challenge with all of our departments. because they need to be honest and they need to be objective. You need to have good information in there. I have met with our police captain and the police departments in the process of redoing their evaluation a little bit to make it a little more meaningful and easier to write. And they also have some software internally that is helping them capture some of that information throughout the year. So you're not writing an evaluation really from last week. And then HR, we are always happy to go into a department and help with some of that training. The PD actually invited me a couple months ago, and I went to a larger group of supervisors and we discussed some various topics. Evals wasn't one of them, but we have talked about that before. But we have new supervisors always rotating in, so the training needs to be kind of rotating. We're always happy to do that.
Well, I would imagine that some of the other departments, streets, water, fire, they all have evals that are due too. They might not end up in a courtroom as easy as law enforcement will, but you've got to have some of the same issues with other departments of just making sure these evaluations are good and solid.
Yes, and we actually read every one of them that comes back into HR. They go into the employee's file that we keep, and we will send them back to the departments if there's inappropriate language in there that shouldn't be in there, if there is a very subjective comment in there that doesn't, go with any of the ratings, and we'll send those back for correction.
Great, thank you.
Sure, had a couple of comments, but kind of starting there first two that we might, Anna had mentioned, I think before, well, one thing, elected officials are employees too. And so, I've appreciated, I interact with all three of the HR folks on different things at different times, and it's a very helpful office. And also on, have mentioned on the, some of the things, and this is, I think I still see Troy back there, and for the finance piece and things where, you got to spend a little money up front, but will save you money down the road. And some of the things like, and again, using the example of working at, and I say at my last job, things like the, so much of what they did that was where the employee could go in and, I'm going to refinance a house. I could have 3 of my last pay stubs, and instead of having you guys or somebody have to take time, they can go in and self-serve, and they can print them, and all kinds of that information that is self-serve. And they also have a very, what I would say, kind of sophisticated, and I'm sure other ones do, but with that whole evaluation process, where it is a lot of it's, it is automated and software-based that, again, would have an upfront cost, but it does everything from keeps them on time, and it's got, the supervisor, the employee, the supervisor has to sign off. There's chance for back and forth, and then a final meeting. But in terms of keeping, really keeping straight on the process and not having something where you're going to have something, bite you down the road. So that just, any of those tools that we can look at, and I appreciate that sometimes the answer is, we'd like to do that, but it's a cost, and I'm saying don't let that stop us from looking, because we need to analyze. Just like, hey, if, buying a new cat equipment, because it's going to save money in the long run. It won't save money next year, but down the road, and keep us out of trouble. Anyway, I think those are some things to look at. The only other plug, I'm just kind of thing I would mention with the employee assistance program, that's something that is terrific that we've got. The county had it as well, and having a background for 25 plus years as licensed counselor, I've got some appreciation of the dynamics of that, and everybody is going to go through some normal life stuff, and yet they're kind of like, oh boy, if you really needed to talk to somebody, if you didn't have something like this, and you thought, how in the world do you find a counselor and how expensive and all of that, and read articles every day about, well, with COVID, that some of the mental health stressors and things, I mean, they're at a real high peak unemployment. I mean, there's a lot of stressors out there. So to have something where they can do something very immediate and low-key and get some real assistance, I mean, that's just a terrific benefit. So I would just encourage, if our employees, and again, it extends to spouses, that's a terrific thing that you shouldn't feel twice about taking advantage of if you think it's something that would help you.
Right, and all confidential, so employees should feel comfortable using it. And just to address your first part of your statement there, finance is bringing something forward in the budget this year that will help employees go to an area to capture some of that information themselves.
Great,
So.
great.
Any further questions for Melissa?
No.
Well, thank you so much.
You're
This
welcome.
was a great presentation. I appreciate your time.
You're welcome, thank you.
Anything else for us from the audience? With no other business, this meeting is adjourned.
All right.
Thank you.